And now here's part 2 of our episode.
Noah, tell us why that is your standout track from this album, which incidentally it is also my standout track from this album. But anyway, what does it mean to you?
That song, there's something about the chorus, the way it has this continuous build, and then it goes into this like very twangy kind of even southern like steel guitar, it sounds like at times. What I interpreted Creature Fear was that is the fear of like anything can happen, and in a way that's wonderful, but in a way that's absolutely terrifying of the unknown elements. And then again, there's something about the calmness and stillness where it's like, though I'm feeling those feelings in that moment when the buildup of the chorus is coming up in Creature Fear, and then when it transitions into Teams, I kind of let myself go and kind of, it feels as if I'm letting go of those worries of the what ifs, ands, or buts.
I like that take. That's a good take.
And then it leads into, the Pharema song, which is kind of, him accepting it's over and you're just going to keep moving on.
You get 1,000,000 points for that. Letting go.
That purple dinosaur, I can take.
You're actually not quite there. So
dang it.
You can hear the self-engineering on the song.
Right.
Like it's a song, because I mean sometimes when you hear a piece of music that's been the takes have been cobbled together in some way, and you're kind of like, ooh, it sounds like an interruption, but I don't know, there's something about the way he's cobbled it together here that it feels like it fits the song. Like I can hear him and see him in his cabin putting this one together and making the decision like, no, we're going to let them hear the seams, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I really do like, the grittiness of it at times. It feels, the best way I can say is just, it's rustic sounding. It does sound, it's like
it's
very rustic. Self-engineered.
But what's cool is I think that he sort of straddles this line between everything feeling very in control, but also just on the precipice of falling apart. It's something I often feel is that the artists that can ride that line between mess and precision, there's a special, they seem to have impactful music in a special way.
It gave him a platform to do all these things that I think he could only do so much with his own self-production. So like you hear like elements of auto-tune in his own individual work, and you could see like these little bits of kind of what he's aspiring to do and kind of experiment with certain elements and try different genre influences involved. And, I guess what really astounds me is just, him seeing the beginning of a potentially successful artist, like at his very, very beginnings, and seeing the little nuggets of where he could go.
I feel like there's also, two things. One, I'm pretty sure I hear a tiny bit of auto-tune on this album. There's like one track where his voice, if you listen real closely, you can hear it. But it also sort of reminds me of the fact that I feel like there is a Venn diagram, and there is very little outside the like overlap when you put Bon Iver and James Blake together. Because I feel like there is so much overlap between these two artists,
right.
And not like they're creating the same type of music, because I guess Bon Iver always leans a little bit more towards folk for me, and James Blake feels like he's leaning way more towards like ambient or electronic,
right?
But there's a crossover here.
Soul.
Soul in it too.
Instead of using auto-tune to simply just correct the pitch, they were utilizing it as like a whole different part of the arrangement.
Yeah, it's like an instrument.
Yeah.
And he definitely much more openly incorporates it on the EP that came after this, the Blood Bank EP.
Oh gosh,
that feels like it was the launch pad into the Kanye stuff. The I think it's like 4 songs on the Blood Bank EP, and they all feel like they directly. I'm sure Kanye heard that and was like, "All right, bring this guy. Let's get this guy in here."
Ooh, what? Ooh, what is this?
What's this guy doing?
Get into Hawaii.
This is our Kanye impression.
Ooh.
Straight to SNL with the two of you.
I can only go so far.
But before we get to any other of the other albums, because I feel like that's where the conversation is going, we do want to ask the question we ask of everybody. We asked you for what your perfect albums were. We asked you for 4 of them,
You gave us like 17. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know when this question was coming up, I was like, God, I'm such a dick.
No. It's better for us to have more than less. It helps with curation. But the question is, what were the standards you were basing them on? What was the rubric you were grading them against?
Sure. Good.
It has to be good.
It has to be good. That's like the number one element.
That's a really good point.
No one said that. Honestly, no one has said that yet.
I gotta have some a connection to it, and it doesn't have to be necessarily well, I mean, I guess it is always emotional, but it doesn't have to be like, oh, I relate to what they're talking about. It can just have like a relation to a memory or a good period of time, and
a personal connection.
Yeah, and it formed like, when you have like a playlist, you're like, that playlist was a really good way of like summing up that summer. It's like something like that. And honestly, I think longevity.
Say more. What do you mean by longevity?
I think
it has to hold up.
And I don't know what the time frame is where you start kind of figuring out whether or not it's a staple. I mean, the ones that come to mind for me, at least, that kind of meet those criteria are like 9 Inch Nails, The Fragile. I love Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. That was the album that made that kind of like rock funk infusion in like early 90s, like very mainstream. They like that album did it. And I think for me, that was like the Red Hot Chili Peppers were the biggest influence for me in terms of exploring music.
So you're saying that a perfect album has to be a classic. Is that so far?
For me. Well, do you mean a classic like in general?
I'm oversimplifying for the sake of discussion. But when you so I guess maybe that's the question is what makes an album a classic to you? Does it have to be perfect?
No.
Or can a classic album be imperfect?
It's nothing is perfect.
Well, hold on.
Our podcast is going to crumble right now, Noah. You can't say that.
I was just like waiting for the rebuttal. No. But no, I think what makes like a standout album, in terms, because when I think of classic, I think of an album that you can always return to, and no matter what, it is good. And I think you're never going to have every single person agree on the same record, but I think if you get a majority vote and everyone hears it again and goes, oh yeah, this is, yeah. But I don't think they all have to be even necessarily good. Like I'll hear music that I go, I don't understand why this is still a thing. But
the widespread acceptance or the wide like the kind of agreement in the greater listenership, I think that's an interesting point because I don't know if we talk about that much, like the popularity element of it, right? Like, does a perfect album have to be widely popular? Do a lot of people have to agree, or can it be niche? Like we talked about the Mars Volta recently, and I feel like that would be kind of niche. Like it's not
niche.
Yeah. And so for Gabriel, the album's perfection wasn't contingent on like widespread like what's the word I'm looking for? Consensus. I think it can go either way, and I think it can add. It seems to me like in the data that we've gathered thus far, that sometimes the popularity of an album does contribute to its perfection, and other times the lack of popularity contributes to its perfection. If you know what I mean.
For me, it would just have to be continuously able to go back to it, listen to it through and through without ever stopping, and have and still. Maybe your feelings change over time. Maybe it registers differently, but you can always go back to it and enjoy it somehow.
So re-listenability. That's a pillar, huh?
Yeah, because the whole mass appeal and the popularity thing, I think is, I mean, clearly it's flawed, but then it does add to what we classify as, a quote unquote classic album. Yeah.
Well, I think especially now as the metrics and our ways of measuring those things have changed a lot. The charts play a far, I mean, at least in my opinion, like charts play a far less important role in determining the success of an album or song feel free to disagree, either of you, with that. At least that's my feeling on kind of like where we are in music right now. For what it's worth, I think you would really like to Last in the Comatorium. I think that would be right up your alley.
I just wanted to say there was one last album that I would consider, and it's Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass's Whipped Cream and Other Delights.
Ooh, yes.
So, it's you get a lot of nice brass sections. You got a little bit of,
That's so accessible. Herb Alpert is Herb Alpert's great. I'm going to give you 3 million points, and guess what?
What?
You just got the purple dinosaur, baby.
Oh, God. Why is it missing an eye, though? Is this one of the ones that you picked up?
Don't ask.
No one else would take this one?
I guess you got to get more points so you can get a different purple dinosaur.
Michael comes in slowly. He's like, you want the eye? Want the eye?
It'll cost you 4 million more points.
Oh, God. I gotta come up with some quick answers, man.
Well, we're talking about mass appeal, and I'm thinking about the fact that this was not my first exposure to Bon Iver. My first exposure was the second album, the self-titled album, with like the very wintry illustration on the cover, which feels like, you want to talk about like an album cover matching the music, like 100%. Like that's exactly what that album sounds like, and that's the album that got Bon Iver the Grammys. I guess I'm just wondering for you, like why is Forever Forever Ago stand out more in your mind than the second album, which arguably probably has more widespread acclaim?
No, yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't want to take away from that album, because that album was huge to me too. Because that album came out like right as I was graduating high school, a little before I graduated high school, and then I saw him live doing that album, and this is when he actually had like a full band with him, and my girlfriend who had just broken up with me was at the show. That's probably why, the most part, it's kind of harder. There's I don't know about you guys, but there's like some music that's kind of, I've attached certain memories and emotions. It's just kind of hard. It's not like I won't ever, but it proves to be more difficult to revisit.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
There's that personal connection, right? You gotta, but it goes both ways. It cuts both positive.
Phenomenal album. And if you want to know a fun fact, the song Towers in it is about him losing his virginity at the University of Eau Claire's residence hall, Towers.
Hey, good for you, Bon Iver.
Look,
good for you, Justin.
I mean, who wouldn't want to make a song about them subtly talking about them losing their virginity for mass appeal?
Hey, share your story. Glad you got laid. Good for you. You know what? I'm gonna give Justin Vernon 40,000 points for getting laid in college.
For doing the deed. Yeah. No, but and I guess also just to finish up with Michael asked, the first album, I think, so when I was like leaving middle school, going to high school, my family kind of just like split apart, and it was very much like I didn't have a home base. And at the time of my high school, like my friends were really my family. And when I started really in high school trying to figure out more of what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, what I was actually interested in, not just trying to appease others and figuring out who Noah was, I was like, this album really to me speaks about growing up kind of in difficult situations, but in the Wisconsin aesthetic of it all, and then having just this close group of people that this album constantly reminds me of them, and they're, I'm in 2 of their wedding parties, and so that album really brings me back to times that I was like, I've had a lot of struggles in my life with, as you guys know, with mental health and substance abuse. And, I think to have these kind of records that really, when you're having a difficult time, and like reminds me when I was having a difficult time in high school, it brings out all the wonderful things that helped me get past it.
Oh, yeah.
And it brought back this revelation that this doesn't have to go away. This album doesn't necessarily have to stand for what you were going through in your high school. This is an album that really can be applicable to many difficult scenarios. And I think that's another good take too. If you can find an album that does that, like then I don't care whether you call it a classic or a perfect. You've won.
Well, you get another purple dinosaur, buddy. That's a great point. That's 6 million points for this. The home aspect of it, I think, is huge. And yeah, Justin, JV 2024, baby.
I'm making sure we didn't forget about the independent party.
Listeners, he's pulling up the shirt so that we can all see JV 2024, Justin Vernon for Prez. But I think that's a really well made point, and not only it representing a sense of home for you when maybe you didn't have that solid footing underneath you at that time in your life, but also its ability to continue to be a touchstone for you over time. I think that absolutely is a strong point in the direction of this album's perfection. 100%.
Yeah, growing up is wild.
It really, really is.
And I know it's funny, but dude, I wholeheartedly admit it. I was like, yeah, I don't even know. I don't even have words. I'm still just figuring out like this. I listened to the album a couple days before, and things are going great for me at the moment. But, I have like certain things in my life that, are troubling or, I get concerned about. And I was listening to it through my own sobriety too. I've had to work on coping mechanisms and what, I can do to, just be in a state of peace where I can, not be overwhelmed so much. And it was interesting because this album completely manifested and translated itself into now without any effort.
Yeah. 2008 to like 2011, there was a lot of this kind of indie folk thing happening.
Oh, yeah.
Both on the
were out.
There's Fleet Foxes, and then there was, it went more indie, more hipster, less indie, less hipster. There was the Lumineers of it all, and there was the the Fleet Foxes, and so I think this sound, especially for us, Midwestern white boys growing up at this time, it was everywhere, and Bon Iver was kind of like the synthesis of it all. He was sort of the common thread, at least his sound was. So yeah, it's transported in a way, and it's cool that it's still applicable to you, because I think a lot of people could just say, "Man, it sounds like 2009 to me."
For sure, and there's definitely music that I do go, "Oh, this sounds like that year," and it stays in that year, and I go, "That's wonderful." And maybe I still enjoy it, but it's not going to mean the same thing.
What happened to Gautier? Remember that Somebody That I Used to Know song? Remember that damn song? I feel like we've talked about this on the pod before.
I think that song has come up before. Yeah.
What happened to that guy? It was a good song.
And maybe he's the one doing real estate. I think I got them mixed up.
Did you? Okay, Gautier is doing real estate.
Gautier's doing real estate. Ed Drust is doing as a therapist.
So, is he Australian or New Zealand?
I think he's Australian. Gautier.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, great song. But I mean, I literally don't know any other song he's ever done.
Noah, I plan on talking to you about Bon Iver for many years to come. And so I'm very grateful that you brought this album and we're shared so openly. It's freaking awesome. But this is a competition, as you know. You've been collecting dinosaurs and almost collecting dinosaurs the whole time. And so it's time for us to go to the board, see the points that you gathered, and make our assessment as to whether this album truly is perfect. Sound good?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So starting with the most recent points I gave you 6 million points for this idea of this album being home to you. It bringing back the woods of Wisconsin and your buddies who you shared this album with. Excellent point made. I gave 40,000 points to Justin Vernon for having sex in college, but I'm going to give those 40,000 points to you. I think we all win in this situation, right?
He wasn't talking about it. I gave the listeners the knowledge.
That's true. So they're your points.
Yeah.
3 million points for invoking Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. I believe that is the first invocation of Mr. Alpert on the pod. I gave you 1 million points for the connection between Creature Fear and Team. Those two songs sort of being like a release and a letting go of this build-up after time. I think that's an excellently made point. 60,000 points for your band in high school being called the Jam Theory. Hell yeah.
It wasn't my idea, to be honest. I had a worse name.
Okay, good. I'm glad it ended up as the jam theory then. 50,000 points for Skinny Love on Later with Jules Holland being your entry point into this album. If we can find it, it'll be in the episode description, people. 25,000 points for Ben Smith, The Phenomenal Anomaly. The mandolin playing anomaly. You got 25,000 points for that one.
Got it.
Hey, Ben, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. 12,000 points for the stillness and calm of folk being something you're really connected with. 6,000 points for Drowning Pool and their song Bodies Hit the Floor, because I definitely hadn't thought about that one in many years. 3,500 points for Alien Ant Farm's version of Smooth Criminal. Hope they're all doing all right. 7,000 points for you requesting NSYNC's No Strings Attached. 3,000 points for saying that if you had to choose between losing your sense of sight or your sense of hearing, I'd go blind. And then you gave Michael a 9 out of 10 for his 60-second recap of Bon Iver and this album. All in all, I'd say this board is looking pretty good. But you all know how it goes. I put it to my buddy Michael. Michael, you heard the case that Noah made.
Uh-huh.
You saw the points on the board.
Yep.
Tell us, is For Emma, Forever Ago by Bon Iver a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
I mean, anyone who can make a connection between NSYNC's No Strings Attached and Bon Iver's, first demo of an album that turned into a real album. I mean, that's a solid case. Yeah, no, I think you did it. Not only you got 2 purple dinosaurs and a perfect album here.
Yes.
Hey.
Thanks for the second one had both of the eyes, so I really appreciate that.
It did. You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah. You've earned it.
Yeah. That means a lot, you guys. No, seriously.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah.
Dude, yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me on. This is so much fun.
Oh yeah, this was a long time coming. We're so glad to have you on. We're going to share our standout track from the album. I went game time decision depending on how the conversation went, and I think it's clear to me that we got to choose For Emma, the song, as the standout. My reasoning personally is just that it's a contrast in that it's so fully orchestrated. It's a very complete song, and I think that it has the kind of drive that you have heard from the rest of the album. There's a celebratory nature to it. There's a kind of joy in it that I think you wouldn't expect.
And also we're gonna make sure the listeners hear Noah and the Jam Theory's version of Skinny Love, so we don't need to hear the album's version.
Right.
Of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yours is gonna be far better.
I'm pretty sure it's on there. It was at the Miramar on the east side of Milwaukee, and I think like 20 people showed up.
Hell yeah.
That was actually pretty yeah, no, I was actually kind of stunned.
I'm hoping 20 people show up to our improv show. No, that's what I'm hoping for.
To be honest, I think we have a couple people. You said you had some friends, right?
Yeah.
I think I have a couple people coming.
Good. Well, thanks, buddy. We're gonna leave the listeners with For Emma. Michael, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, let's let them hear it.
All right, everybody. This is For Emma. Thanks for tuning in as always. Much love.
Bye.